Hello friends, and welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about piercing and the healing process. Now when you get a piercing, getting it, honestly, kind of the easy part. You go in, you pick out your jewelry, you decide what you want to do, you get it pierced, and you're good to go. However, immediately after getting it pierced, that's when the hard part begins, and that is actually healing your piercing. Now most of us understand that when you're getting a piercing or tattoo or anything of this nature, there's healing that has to go on. Your body has to heal this wound that we've created, and that takes time and it takes a little bit of effort, or what we call aftercare. But I found that a lot of clients don't really understand what to expect from the healing process. And with good reason. This isn't exactly information that we talk about a whole bunch. It's kind of, I think, taken a little for granted in the industry that your average client will understand what to expect from healing. And a lot of studios just have some throwaway text on their website or in their aftercare brochure that very briefly explains what can happen during healing, but nothing really super in-depth. And I find that this leads to a lot of confusion. I have clients who message me all the time asking if something is normal that is super duper normal for the healing process. On the flip side, I'll have a client come in with something very abnormal going on with their piercing, who assumes, I just thought they're always like this. So today, we're going to talk about what you can expect from the process of healing a piercing. Now initially, right after being pierced, and for the first 1 to 3 weeks, some of the things that you can expect from a fresh piercing are swelling, tenderness, bleeding, bruising, secretions, redness, and some general discomfort. Now, all of these things can be incredibly normal with a brand new piercing. Again, we are making a wound in your body, we're putting a foreign object in it, and we want the body to heal it there and leave it there. That's a pretty big ask for our body, so there's going to be some stuff going on. Now, that being said, while all of these things can be normal, under certain circumstances, it may be worth following up with your piercer. There may be a little bit of a cause for concern. So let's kind of get into that. First of all, swelling. Swelling is very normal with the vast majority of piercings. That's actually why we pierce with longer barbells initially and have you come back in to downsize after the first few weeks or months depending on the piercing. And I have a bunch of blog posts that go over things like initial piercing jewelry, initial sizing, and swelling on my website. However, overswelling is not normal. So that's when you swell more than the length of the jewelry that you've been provided. And that can happen for a number of different reasons. You might leave your studio and go home and immediately your little brother hits you in the head with a football, or your dog headbutts you in the piercing. Now you've got this big trauma that causes some overswelling. You also might have a health condition or an immune condition that causes some excess swelling to go on. It might be a side effect of a medication, or drinking alcohol or caffeine, or your body might just decide to swell a whole bunch with this one. Now the good news is overswelling is not a reason to panic. I also have a whole blog post about what to do in a situation of overswelling on my website, but just reach back out to your piercer. You can usually pop right in, we can swap you for a slightly longer bar, no big deal. So a little bit of swelling initially, super normal. A ton of swelling to the point of overswelling, not normal, but also not usually a cause for concern. Usually something very easy to fix. Now redness and tenderness, this is both super normal after a piercing. Again, it is a wound. But if you have dark radiating redness from around your piercing, or this has crossed the line from tender to incredibly painful or even excruciating, those would be situations to follow up with your piercer in. There could be something else going on. But a little bit of redness, a little bit of tenderness or soreness, that is all to be expected from a brand new piercing. Now bruising, this is the one that gets a lot of people, because you see a bruise around a piercing and you kind of want to freak out, you're like, what's going on? But bruising can actually be quite normal for a lot of different people depending on how prone to bruising they are. Certain medical conditions can make folks more prone to bruising. My EDS zebras, I'm looking at you, y'all love to bruise, but certain piercings can be more prone to bruising as well. The foremost amongst those are going to be anything around the eyes, so eyebrows, bridges, and surface work around the eyes. you might end up with a black eye. That happens so frequently that every single time I do an eyebrow or a bridge or something in that vicinity, part of my aftercare speech with my client is warning them that there's a slight chance that they're going to wake up with a shiner and to come up with a really cool bar fight story in case they do. But it's very normal if that happens. It is nothing to be concerned about. It is nothing to panic about. It happens with those piercings. Surface work in general can be more prone to bruising as well. So you may deal with more bruising when you get surface piercings done. Now, just because those placements are more prone to it, doesn't mean that other placements aren't. So you can even have bruising with an earlobe, with a lip, with a navel. Anywhere we pierce you, there's a risk of bruising. Now, anytime you have bruising, I would follow up with your piercer just to make sure it's a normal amount of bruising and nothing concerning. But bruising is a common side effect that can happen when you get pierced. Bleeding. We are poking holes in people's body. I do hear that bleeding is a side effect. Bleeding can be very normal after a fresh piercing and usually subsides within the first week. Genital piercings and oral piercings are prone to a little bit more bleeding than other placements, but any piercing can bleed a little bit after it's pierced. Especially if you drink alcohol in the time period right around before or after piercing, or drink a lot of caffeine. These are both things that are blood thinners and can cause some excess bleeding. There's also a lot of medical conditions that can make someone bleed more. So if you have bleeding with your piercing, it's honestly usually not super concerning. Bleeding that persists past a week or bleeding that seems excessive, that is concerning, and you should reach back out to your piercer. But for the most part, some minor bleeding, that's totally normal and going to go away with some time. If you are dealing with some bleeding initially, you can take some nice, clean, freshly washed hands and some non-woven gauze and hold some gentle pressure up to the area of the piercing. I would time yourself for about 2 to 5 minutes, and that pressure should be enough to get that bleeding to subside. Now, I know bleeding can be really scary and really intimidating for a lot of folks. I totally understand. I think that's a very normal reaction, but hopefully knowing that that's a normal side effect of getting a piercing helps you feel a little bit less stressed about it. And then the last thing we're going to see initially are secretions. These might be wet secretions. They might be a clear or a pale white or yellow color. It also might be dried secretions, aka those lovely little piercing crusties. And those are super normal, and that's going to happen not just when you're initially pierced, but for the full length of your healing process. Now, why I wanted to mention it is because sometimes people don't get any secretions at all, especially not initially. And I have a lot of folks who reach out to me panicked, thinking that it's weird that their piercing isn't crusty or weepy. And no, that's actually great. If you're one of those lucky folks that just doesn't really produce a lot of crust and secretion during the healing process, congratulations. Like, thank your mom and dad, your genetics are doing something really well. I find that clients who don't tend to get a lot of this usually have a little bit of an easier healing process. Me, I am the queen of crust. I am so crusty when I heal piercings. Like, I get a piercing and basically immediately my body is like, time to make some crust. I have psoriasis, I have medical conditions that affect that. I have a lot more cleaning to do during my aftercare because I am so crusty. Everyone's body is different, so everyone's going to experience a different level of those things over the course of healing, and it's all pretty normal. It's kind of just about how your body heals and how your body ends up producing that stuff. Now, those are some of the things you can expect initially from getting a piercing, but what about during the duration of healing? What can we expect from that part of the process? Well, we're still going to have more of those secretions that we got initially. Those are going to persist for basically our full healing process for most of us. We also may still have some intermittent swelling or bleeding depending on what's going on with our piercing, and we might have the dreaded bumps. Now, all of these things, while not necessarily ideal, are also pretty normal when it comes to healing body piercings. Again, a body piercing is a foreign object stuck in a wound that we want the body to heal around. And the body usually wants to push foreign objects out and get rid of them. So we are telling our body that this foreign object, this splinter, is the good splinter that we want to keep. And all the other splinters that we get are the bad ones that we can get rid of. Our body doesn't know how to tell the difference between those things. So we are really asking our body to do something very outside of its normal healing process when we're trying to heal a piercing. So it's no wonder that it's not always super smooth sailing for folks. Now secretions, like I mentioned, most folks are going to get those on and off for the full healing process. They might go away for a couple months and then come back. They might be consistent for you. They might vary. But crust and liquid secretions are both super normal for the whole time that a piercing heals. Now, swelling and bleeding is what can concern folks more often, and when I see this during the length of healing, it usually happens because of trauma. You hit the piercing, you snagged it, you slept on it funny. All of those are factors that can cause your piercing to swell back up or even have some bleeding weeks and even months into the healing process. You have to understand that the body is building new skin around the jewelry to heal that wound that we've created for your piercing, and that skin is really fragile for a really long time. So if you sleep on it with the whole weight of your big head, if you snag it doing your hair, that skin's kind of just going to tear and you're going to have some bleeding and swelling. The good news is it's usually not a huge deal. If something happens and you do end up making your piercing bleed, get back in touch with your piercer, send them some pictures of what's going on, let them help you. And if you have some extra swelling, even months down the line, again, reach back out to your piercer, let them help you. And then of course, irritation bumps. Most of us are familiar with them. I've talked about them at length here on YouTube and on my blog post. Irritation bumps are an unfortunate reality of getting and healing body piercings. If you're one of those lucky ones and you never get them and never have, congratulations, you're in the minority. Most folks, especially who have multiple piercings, are going to get at least a couple of irritation bumps during the lifetime of getting and healing piercings. And that's okay. That's pretty normal, especially given that these bumps and irritations can often form from accidents or things outside of our control. Piercings can be very slow and long healing wounds. That means we're asking our body to do this work of healing over the course of 6 to 9, sometimes even 12 months. And things are going to change and not always go according to plan during that time period. Seasons are going to change. Your piercing might get irritated in the heat of the summer. It might get irritated in the cold of the winter. If you have seasonal allergies, spring and fall might be a real rough time for you. Your lifestyle might change while this is happening. You might move, you might go through a breakup, you might lose someone who you care about. There might be a lot of stress factors in your life that affect not only how your body is doing on a biological level, but how well you're able to take care of your piercing. If you're busy with a lot of stuff going on, you might not be the most consistent with your aftercare. That could cause your piercing to get irritated. And of course, sometimes we get sick. You get the cold, you get the flu, you're just feeling under the weather. If you're sick, your whole body is sick, and that includes your piercing. So all of these little ups and downs, all of these little accidents, these can all affect how our piercing heals, and they can all be really easy causes of irritation bumps and issues. Now, while I'm not saying that it's like totally fine if you get an irritation bump, obviously I don't ever want anyone to have to get an irritation bump, I am telling you that it's not a huge deal and it's probably going to be just fine. And I'm saying this not just as a professional piercer, but as a person who gets bumps on quite literally every single body piercing that I heal. I don't know that I could tell you a single piercing I've gotten, aside from maybe surface work, that I haven't gotten a bump on. I have skin conditions. I'm not the most responsible at healing and caring for my piercings. It happens, and it's not the end of the world. If anything like this does start to crop up, just get back in touch with your piercer. Let them help. Troubleshooting and helping with irritation and issues is literally part of our job. Now, all of the things that I've mentioned in this video are normal to occur while a piercing is healing, and I really do mean the full time that a piercing is healing. Most piercings take 6 to 9 months to fully heal, and it's not abnormal for them to take a full year, and there's plenty of piercings that take longer than that. There are piercings that might take 2 or 3 years to fully heal, which means you might be dealing with all of these things: swelling, bleeding, irritation bumps, crust, secretions, for that entire time period. So when you decide, oh, I'm gonna go get my nose pierced tomorrow, you are not just signing up to get your nose pierced tomorrow, you are signing up to spend 6, maybe 12, maybe 24 months working on getting this to heal. Now, I know most folks wish I could just give them a magic number and say, hey, this piercing is gonna take exactly this long to heal, this is how long you have to worry about it for, and once it's this old, you never have to think about it again. But unfortunately, that's just not how human bodies work, and everyone's experience with healing is going to be very different. I have a ton of clients who heal great. They heal right at that earliest time frame. If we pierce their earlobe, that is healed in 3 months. If we pierce their cartilage, that is healed in 6 months. even trickier, more difficult piercings. I have clients who can heal an industrial in 6 months, no problems, no questions asked. That's awesome for them, but that's not how I heal. Again, between my medical conditions and my not so great aftercare, I usually take longer than the longest time period to heal. Rooks on average 6 to 12 months. Really common for rooks to take a little over a year. They can be persnickety healers and they can stay swollen for a while. My left rook, 2 full years to heal. That thing was a nightmare. It was super tricky for me to heal. Probably would have been easier if I could have stopped sleeping on it, but you know, here we are. My high nostrils, 2 full years to heal. I wear glasses. I would snag them all the time. It was to the point where I would snag them and I would feel the snag and I would go, oh, that's gonna be a bump in approximately 3 days. And then exactly 3 days later, a big old bump on my high nostrils would crop right up. So healing is not linear and it's not gonna look the same person to person. You might be the friend who heals perfectly at 6 months and 6 months sitting there and you're like, wow, this feels amazing. Like, it doesn't even feel like it's there anymore. Cool. You also might be the friend who 6 months in, you are still crusty, you've got some irritation bumps, and you're very clearly still kind of early on in your healing process. And both of those ways of healing, totally okay. Completely fine. Please do not beat yourself up or feel bad if you are a slow healer. I know it can be really discouraging and disappointing, but it's normal. And honestly, the sooner you accept that your body's just gonna heal how it's gonna heal, and you work to accommodate your body, the easier it's gonna get for you. The best thing I've done is make peace and embrace being a slow, bad healer. And then I recently did a whole video about this, but a super major factor that I see when we're talking about all of these different things in healing and all of these not so awesome things we can expect is being inconsistent with your aftercare. I'm going to link that video here, but I know for a lot of folks staying consistent with aftercare can be a really big struggle. And I get it, I do, because I'm super inconsistent with it myself. But understand that if you are going to be inconsistent with aftercare, if you're not always going to really stay on top of it, you're probably going to take a longer time to heal. You're probably going to deal with potentially more irritation and issues. So if you're like me and you know you're not going to be super responsible with your piercings, cool, we're just going to be slow healers. We can be bump buddies. We can have unfortunate looking piercings together for a couple months. It's fine. But if you don't want to deal with all of this, use that as motivation to stay really consistent with your aftercare, be really on top of your piercings, and honestly, stay in touch with your piercer. Our job does not end once you walk out of the studio door with your brand new piercing. Our job is not just to do the piercing, but to guide you through healing it every step of the way. So please use this as a resource. Reach back out anytime you have questions or concerns. I see way too often folks Googling things or getting bad advice from friends or questionable forums on the internet. If you have a good piercer, we want to help you with healing your piercings. We want you to reach back out to us. So please let us help. That is a little bit of what you can expect from healing a body piercing. I wanted to kind of cover all of the common things, hopefully help normalize them, help you feel not so stressed if you've dealt with some of these things or are dealing with them with your piercings, and also just give you a really honest look at what you might be able to expect from the healing process. Because as much as we wish every piercing just healed perfectly and flawlessly, that is simply not reality. Thanks so much for sitting down and hanging out with me and letting me share some good information about the healing process, and I can't wait to sit down and chat again soon. Have an awesome rest of your day. Bye!